I spent all of last night playing Final Fantasy V. I got to the final dungeon and I had to like go through the process of fighting the final boss, learning the patterns, building my team, optimizing it, and then going up against this like massive super boss with all these ridiculous tactics and abilities and powers. And I came away from it like feeling very, very positively about it. Like I released like a video saying how disappointed I was at Final Fantasy V, and I still stand by that, right? The game does have weird pacing problems, right? It does introduce and drop characters really quickly. Krill isn't incorporated in the plot very well. Like there is no good progression. Like there's a lot of padding, right? The game feels like it's designed around this idea that like okay, like here's a bunch of powers and just optimize them to just completely break the game, right? Like it's fun, it's engaging, I enjoyed it, but at the same time like I look at something like this and I'm just kind of like yeah, like I prefer the more like structured style of like other Final Fantasy games. I do think I like 4 better. I like 6 better, right? 10 better, I think. Like obviously I like the whole like breaking the game thing, but like to me, that's something you should just build up to in the end game. Like it's not something you should be like doing throughout, right? And like there were too many times in like Final Fantasy V where I felt like I was building up my characters throughout. Like it wasn't happening organically. I was like changing job classes all the time and like mixing and matching and experimenting. And it was fun, but at the same time, that's like all I was doing. Like it felt like that's all the game was good at. And the game had like insane difficulty spikes that forced you to really learn like the mechanics and stuff like that. And it's a lot of fun, but again, the story is underwhelming. The characters aren't all that fleshed out, and in a lot of ways, yeah, like they are kind of disappointing, right? I really wondered, like when I was playing this, that like, oh, I would really like to see a remake. Like this is the Final Fantasy game that I think should have been remade next. We got that really good 4 remake on the DS, and what we should have gotten were 5 and 6 remakes after that, and then like 7 remakes for like a proper 7 remake for like the 3DS, right? Like we did not need to skip Final Fantasy 5 and 6 for remakes. Like it just didn't make any sense. But like Final Fantasy 5 feels like a game that has a lot of potential that is not fulfilled, right? There are a lot of cool ideas here that just don't necessarily hit the mark, right? You kind of have to like you do old school things and like kind of use your imagination for it. And I do like that, but in a lot of ways I kind of think the original Final Fantasy did a way better job of that. Right? Like again, Final Fantasy 1 let you go anywhere you want and like get all of this stuff, like build your characters, and it had a really open structure right from the beginning, right? Like you had to like go to certain places first to get like certain items, but like having to figure it all out, like it all made sense. With 5 it feels like more structured and linear, and I feel like that was a really limited experience. Like maybe if right from the get-go you had like an open world to go everywhere and like build your characters, maybe that would have suited the structure better instead of that weird like I don't know. Like again, there were a lot of things I liked about Final Fantasy V for sure, but the thing that I think absolutely makes the game 100% makes the game worth playing is that I genuinely think at this stage that the final boss of Final Fantasy V, Neo Exdeath, is the best final boss in Final Fantasy. Now, not necessarily because I think the boss himself has like an interesting backstory or motivations. Like he's a fucking tree. Okay, like people make fun of this guy for being like one of the lamest Final Fantasy villains, and I agree. He's not intimidating. He's not fun. He's not interesting. Like he just kind of exists. Like and he gets to jump on the heroes in like the most lame way imaginable. Honestly, like not a fan of Exdeath in general as a character. But when you actually like fight the good fight against him, right? When you actually like go up there and fight the tree thing, when you actually like learn all the mechanics, when you actually put your characters against them, like you get this really intense, visually interesting fight. I was surprised the first couple of times I did this, where I'm like, getting outsped by him, and I'm like trying to to select the menus like during as quickly as possible so I can like keep the flow of battle going, so I can heal my guys and like have Forrest jump, and then have like have like Lena use her like dual ninja swords on the boss after like casting Spellblade on them, like, and just going to town. Like, I had like this entire setup, and like it was so intense because like the boss would occasionally whip out all these crazy spells and like wipe out my entire party, and then I would have to like rethink the entire thing, grind some more, and then like go back, and like it was a really intense experience, like one that I don't think I've ever felt in like a Final Fantasy game, because even when I was losing, it felt like I could turn things around and kind of win, right? Until I got like completely wiped, it always felt like, okay, there's so much I can do here. There's so much I can build off of. Like, I have all these resources. I just have to do this. Like, I had things I could do even in like the bleakest of moments, right? And I think in a way, Final Fantasy V's strengths as a combat system, like they were all building up to this specific fight, right? The entire game is a tutorial for Xdeath, and it's worth it, right? Like I don't think I've ever had so much fun playing against a final boss in like a turn-based RPG like this. Like maybe something like Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga comes to mind, but that's a little bit different with like the action commands and stuff like that. Like when I think of like an actual Final Fantasy game though, with like the action turn-based system, like it's a little bit different, right? And it was still intense, right? The boss was ranting about like, oh, the laws of chaos are dissolving. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, he whips out Meteor, like, oh man, I barely survived that, and then he immediately uses Comet and kills me. Like he has all these crazy status conditions, so you have to have like two healers on the field, like taking care of everything. You have to heal the status conditions, and then like heal the guys. Like there's this weird one where like he KOs you and petrifies you while you're KO'd. So you have to do this really specific thing of like throwing a Phoenix down on them, and then like having curing the petrification, and then like doing it again with like all the other people who are suffering from from other status conditions. It is insane. Like it is positively balls to the walls insane. And like one that I really praise as like one of the all-time great like Final Fantasy fights. Like I really enjoyed this one. I thought this was fantastic.